The sink is one of those great staples of the Boulder scene.
The location of the sink is a place that sits right in the middle of the university, the Hill community.
It is the oldest business in the same location in this city.
It's certainly one of the most famous college hangouts in America.
Even just driving by it or walking by it, it looks like a place you want to check out. Just casual, easy, really good food.
Everybody knew about the sink. That's where the night would get started.
It was always such a fun time, and the vibe there was just, people could let loose.
You walk in here and you can immediately feel that it's something special.
I think the art is a huge part of it because it just holds so much of Boulder's history in addition to the restaurant itself.
You tended to have conversations without a lot of eye contact because people were looking at the walls and the ceiling and going, oh, who's that?
It's interesting how far the sink's history goes into other people's histories.
You know, we'd sit down and my parents' initials are carved in the table from the 60s.
I think it's pretty cool to have customers come in and they're like, I came here when I was 19 years old, and that was back in 1953.
A person that comes in and tells me just a little story. I used to work here on the door. I met my wife there, or my husband there.
There's something about the place where people want to come as patrons, people want to work there.
All of those things combine to make it just a loved place by so many people.
As we understand the history, and from what we've been able to verify, two gentlemen bought the building here, which was the Sigma Nu fraternity house, and opened a restaurant called Summer Sunken Gardens in 1923. A family named the Mays owned it at some point in the early 30s.
My grandma works here, and that was during her tenure at University of Colorado. Here's a photo of her at that era. So it was named Sunken Gardens, but it was referred to as the Sink, where everybody that came here, I think from day one, referred to it as the Sink.
My parents bought the sink in 1949. I was about 4.5, 5 years old when they bought it, and basically grew up there. You know, the university was the main economic driver, and the Hill was just a community. Most of the students, I should say, were older, and so many of them were veterans of World War II, and they came back to get an education to make it better for their kids. Coffee had become huge. We had a big morning rush. All the sorority girls and all the fraternity guys, and we served full dinner and had a full kitchen. And in the center of the dining room at the sink was a fountain. And I was fascinated with it. And of course, my arm would fit through and I would fish out all the money that people had thrown in. The sink was dry until my dad got the first beer license for it, the 3-2 license. You couldn't drink the beer in the dining room. You had to drink it on the side of the sink where the little bar was. And I know its claim to fame was sneaking in wrestlers from CU and feeding them beer so they could make weight. The sororities and fraternities were the major driver. My memories are full of the fabulous CU Days parades. The floats made by the sororities and fraternities were something they worked all year on. And those were the kind of people that were in the sink. They were just happy to be college students. Robert Redford worked for Daddy. I have a vague memory of a blonde-haired kid mopping the floors at like 7 o'clock in the morning.
Right after World War II, my father started a bar in Ohio. And my dad was a big golfer, and so was John Pudlick. He met on the golf course and he found out about the sink. And I think there were some other reasons, John was ready to do something else and get out. He immediately saw the potential, and we were in Boulder before I was a year old.
I was the first woman to work there. I was a cheerleader for 3 years and well known. And the student body at that time was only like 10,000 students. And you knew everybody on campus, at least visually. I think the people who worked there had a special camaraderie. We were all sink rats.
When my dad bought it from John Pudlick, his partner was Floyd Marks. And then when my dad's going to sell, they sold it collectively to Herb.
I came to Boulder in the back of a 59 Star Chief so that my dad could take over the management at the sink.
Our dad was a great guy. He was a good father. He was a hard worker. He was beloved by all the kids that worked for him and all the people that came in as customers. Everybody knew about the sink even when we were little kids. It was a place that the college students obviously went to and the community supported. The Hill was the shopping area of Boulder.
Of course, the city of Boulder was about 30,000 people, and the city ended at 30th Street.
I used to go get a beer at the sink after Norland Library was closed. I mean, it was amazing. I'll never forget that. It was packed with people, a big jukebox blasting. It just had a vibe, it still does. And I got friendly with the owner, Herbie Kavar. And one day I decided I was dropping out of graduate school and I maybe wanted to do something with people and maybe music or something. And to my absolute astonishment, he said, "Why don't you manage the sink?" I never managed a bar. He said, "No, you're really smart. People at the sink all love you."
A roommate of mine, he said, "You got to come to the University of Colorado." I left the Marines and I came there, and the first day I got there, I walked into the sink and Herb Kavar was on the floor and getting the worst of a battle. So I walked over and I grabbed the guy by his long hair and beads and I threw him through the doors. And Herb got up and he looked at me and he said, "You want a job?"
Tossing people on the street, that was the recommended way to get people out of there. Somebody was misbehaving, you just pick them up and throw them out, and the bouncers were very proud to do that. It was almost a badge of courage to be thrown out of the sink because a lot of people would brag about it.
I came to Boulder on a swimming scholarship. Chuck said, "I can give you $1.39 an hour as minimum wage and a hamburger every shift, and you'll meet more girls than Frank Sinatra." It was fun. We were young and we were alive, and it was the age of Aquarius, and there still were the old school, the Animal House type of fratty guys, but they were hipsters.
The world was quite different in 1970.
All they had was sink burgers, hot dogs, and French fries.
Boulder needed a place like this thing, close to the campus, close to the young people, affordable.
FAC was Friday Afternoon Club. Most of the beer was never stopped. We'd blow a keg every 8 minutes. One day I came up with this crazy idea of having the whole staff dress up in tuxedos. So I said, "Come to something you'll never see at the sink, a formal FAC," and it broke every record. You couldn't breathe in the place.
I remember the jukebox. It was very popular, and all the songs that I remember, "I'm a Lonesome Polecat" from Seven Brides and Seven Brothers, which was a smash hit in the 50s.
Cat. The jukebox was always on at the sink. I think there were several Rolling Stones 45s that we replaced a dozen times.
But kids in Boulder, they were listening to music that wasn't necessarily hit singles. And I convinced the jukebox company that we rented that I would go down and make 45s on music that were not hit singles. And I doubled the amount of business. Like I took the Long Range theme song and put it on the jukebox, and every kid wanted to play it.
As we would spend more and more time at the sink, we wanted to get into the music more.
I found out managing the sink that I was a natural promoter. And then I started booking some local bands in the back room and the upstairs. The upstairs was a pool hall.
My dad built a place called the Faucet Room upstairs, which was a live music venue.
Boulder in the late 60s, early 70s was becoming a music mecca. And I felt that Boulder didn't have any, or Denver didn't have a national rock club at the time. Tulagis was like a college fraternity hangout that had dance bands, and then they went out of business.
Tulagis was a place that my dad bought. We reopened it and started bringing in national entertainment, a total different change from what the Tulagi had ever done.
I left the Sink and took over as part owner, minority owner at Tulagis, with Herbie putting up most of the money, all the money. But he made me a partner on that, and I started booking the first tours of Linda Ronstadt, the second show of the Eagles.
Quite unique for Bonnie Raitt to come in on a Tuesday and play through Saturday.
I remember throwing Paul Simon out because I didn't know who he was, and Stephen Stills would show up, and I didn't know who he was, and I told him he couldn't come in.
It was a wild time. I mean, think about Boulder in the late 60s. It was sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
The lore of the history of drinking on the hill is that the Guinness Book of World Records claimed that the world record amount of bottled beer was sold at the Sink, and then up the street at the Tulagi, they held the world record for the amount of draft beer that was sold. So between the two places, there was a lot of drinking going on the hill and in Boulder in those years.
I loved to mop up in the morning because they'd be so loaded, they'd be paying for their pitchers, and there'd be dollar bills and money all over the floor. So you'd make $25, which was a lot of money in 1969, every time you worked.
My mom and dad looked at the space above the Tulagi. Her and my dad and my brother developed what they called Herbie's Deli. And all the sandwiches that were sold at the Tulagi were made at Herbie's Deli. It was post-Vietnam, and we were getting a lot of vets coming back to Boulder, and we were having riots on the hill, and that interaction brought more crime to Boulder. It brought cycle gangs from Denver. We had one called the Fuchs, which used to hang out in Boulder, at the Sink specifically. So it was determined in '74 that there had to be a concept change at the Sink because it couldn't continue. And they took Herbie's Deli down to the Sink, and we sold the Tulagi in the end of '73.
We put up barnwood, we changed the seating. It was just a total different concept change for the restaurant, and it remained that way for 15 years. The changes that happened to the Sink were as a direct result of the change of the federal drinking laws. In 1987, the federal government said that all the states had to raise the drinking age to 21 or they would lose millions of dollars of federal highway funds. We decided that we had to close down our place. We were obsolete in terms of concept and selling 3-2 beer. There wasn't an age distinction between the products anymore.
And my brother said to me, he says, well, it'd be nice if we had a bar. And I go, well, we do have a bar. And he looked at me and we sort of looked at each other and we decided that why not put the Sink back? It was a 3-month project, which culminated in my brother actively going out and getting the liquor license. But it was a major amount of work to turn it from a very primitive 3-2 beer bar into a modern full-service bar. Quite a bit of money, so it was a gamble for our family. The reopening was a scene. It was mobbed, and because of where it's at, everybody saw what was going on there. We were used to selling beer, and then all of a sudden we're selling mixed drinks, and we were quite overwhelmed at how much money came in. And I'll never forget my dad's face when he saw how much we took in that first night.
We evolved menu-wise. We added Bojo's Pizza to the menu. We were just trying to offer as much as we could of our experience of serving good food to the people and the students in Boulder.
I graduated from University of Wisconsin-Madison. I moved to Minneapolis for a year. The Midwest wasn't really agreeing with me, so I came out to Colorado to go for a walk in the woods. My brother James had moved out this way and was living in Boulder, and we were looking around for a business to get involved with.
Herbie, who owned the sink, was a business broker on the side. Our brother James was working with him. They were looking at various things like a laundromat and a 5 and Dime in Estes Park. And as Herbie got to know us, he out of the blue offered this place to us.
We'd reached a point in our life, we felt like we'd done a great thing for our family and for the university and for the town, really, to bring the sink back. My mom was sick at the time. That prompted us to say, well, maybe this is the right time for us to segue.
When Mark showed up and James and Chris, they were pilgrims. I mean, they didn't know what they were getting into at all.
So originally, there were 4 of us that bought the sink together. There's my brother James, my brother Chris, and our friend Cameron. I was 26. Yeah, we were young. We knew it had a lot of history. We appreciated the history. You know, we knew we had a lot to work with here. The hill was super vibrant. It was in the midst of being a really musical town, Boulder was. And the hill was right in the middle of all that.
The Fox Theater was one of the only small theaters in the region, so they were getting really great big-time shows. There was always something going on, and 1,500, 2,000 people out at night on a Friday night on the hill.
We had live music 3 days a week. Being open till 2 was a standard thing. We were doing about 60% of our business after 10 p.m. Most all of that was in alcohol.
The bar scene really beat up stuff. I mean, every morning it was come in and see what broke the night before, and we realized that we needed to do some things to make this place a little more bomb-proof.
In 1995, we shut down for a month and redid the plumbing, put in 18 tap handles of beer lines instead of the 5 that we had.
It was really the forefront of the craft beer revolution, and try and be ahead of that one. We were the first fat tire account in Boulder.
We redid the bathrooms, we redid the furniture, we redid the lighting, we upgraded the kitchen at that time. And that was really a big moment for us to be able to push forward from.
Well, the original artwork was Mike Dormer in the 50s. He did surf art in California, but he also apparently painted a number of bars across the country. He apparently met with the original owners, and they decided on the theme, which would be the angel and the devil. The need to have some artwork in that front room ended up with these beautiful panels. It showed a bunch of sorority girls drinking beer out of a straw, diving into the lake here, playing football. So it was a whole diatribe of life here in Boulder. And once you looked at those murals and walked inside, it all made sense.
The art was covered up for many years. When the sink closed down in 1974, we put barnwood up on the walls there. We basically covered up all the artwork. It was sitting there dormant for 15 plus years. Then when we decided to bring the sink back in 1989, my brother and I were able to get in touch with Lloyd Cavich, the crazy hippie artist from Santa Barbara, California. He used to introduce himself as Lloyd Cavich with 3 L's just for the L of it.
And here, 3 famous local residents of Boulder, Herbie and the sons of Herbie doing the Frisbee.
Was truly a genius at what he did.
Lloyd was quite a character, and we were fortunate enough to have him back when we did a big remodel in 1995.
Okay, now see, this is the door into the bathroom.
That one is a functional door.
That's a real door. But what I did is I painted the old door here.
You going there, bro?
This is where the door used to be, and now several times a night you will see patrons bouncing off the wall, trying to open this door that isn't there, which is always good for a yuck.
There's a few people on the walls that are, notable sports writers, music writers at the time, barflies of the day.
We're looking right now at the wall of the old sink rats.
Tim and I are going to celebrate our 25th anniversary in August this year.
The relationship started from her being a sink rat and me being a bouncer. And before we knew each other, or before we even spoke a word to each other, she was painted right here and I was painted right underneath her.
God created the meat and the cheese and the sauce, and on the 8th day, man created the sink burger. And he saw that it was good. And there you have it. Streamline the Wonder Dog.
As I understand it, way back when, the ceilings were like an asbestos coating and people would take their lighters and burn their names into the ceiling. Well, obviously we don't allow that anymore, and we don't have asbestos ceilings. So we have nice flat ceilings, and people can take a magic marker or a crayon, whatever they have, and you're more than welcome to sign the ceilings. Just please stay off the walls and not on the artwork.
Restoring the art and the walls, I think, just came because I was always running around the sink with my camera. I took a ton of photos, and so Mark and Chris knew that I was kind of on the artsy side of things. I was studying photography in school, and it was really fun because the paintings there are so detailed. If you actually go and look and spend some time there and look at them, there's words, there's stories throughout them.
I've been restoring Lloyd's work over the last couple of years to get ready for the 100th anniversary. Having my grandma working here and then being asked to actually do this, it's my greatest accomplishment for art, I think.
It was so cool to kind of bring something back to life and do that all throughout the building. It was a great time.
It's just a cool time capsule of history that is very almost gone now in Boulder.
The sink's always been a very eclectic atmosphere, and we get lots of different folks coming in all the time.
You never know what's going to happen when we open the front door.
You can always see all the famous people who came in, you know, Dan Aykroyd, that's where we were when the real world came in there.
Having diners, drive-ins, and dives come in was a really great experience. And that really kind of supercharged everything. So we got a lot of attention at that point.
It was really cool to have Guy there and he could try all the food. It made you really proud that you worked there, that you got to be a part of that history.
We had Anthony Bourdain come in with Eric Repair doing their book tour. That was a great experience. The Obama visit was really interesting. That afternoon, Obama was giving a speech over at the Coors Event Center. An employee came up and said, hey, there's a guy downstairs who wants to talk to one of the managers. And he said, hey, Obama's coming in 20 minutes.
All of the Secret Service agents just come out of nowhere. All of a sudden they're on the roof and in the alley, and they've got the whole place locked down.
Sure enough, Obama walked through the door. It was really just a surreal experience.
He went and he met everybody in the entire restaurant, shook their hand, asked them a question, maybe asked them a follow-up question.
The transition we've gone through from 1992 to today has been a very natural evolution for us in that we started this culinary journey of improving the menu and making it more broad-based appeal. Today we close at 10 p.m. and we're way more of a restaurant now that has bar service versus a bar that had some food service. We never wanted to lose the essence of what the sink is or was. We just wanted to evolve it.
30 years ago when we bought the sink, we had a 10-year plan, and then it just kind of turned to 30. We brought Tell on partly because we were ready to kind of get away from the day-to-day a little bit, and also he was probably the best employee we've ever hired.
I've been at the sink since 2013. I wasn't specifically looking for the sink. I kind of feel that the sink kind of found me, and then I just fell in love with it after that.
think the sink is becoming synonymous with Boulder, the Pearl Street Mall, the Flatirons.
Having the sink, we hear about the friendships that were created here. We hear about how thankful they are that it's actually still here.
I loved working at the sink. It kind of became my whole personality, was that I work at the sink. That was my thing.
It was a really fun time because everyone there was a part of a team or felt like they were a part of a team. And that came out when we were all kind of in the thick of it, running around together.
Being at the sink for those main events was just, it was joyful.
It was like lightning in a bottle at the time.
All the comfortableness of being at the sink and in your memories, the nostalgia, people are not looking less for that, they're looking more for that as time goes on.
I think this spot, the location, the story behind, it doesn't get any better than that as far as a story and a legacy goes.
It's just been a rite of passage, really, for everybody. My great-grandparents taking my grandparents there when it was summers, to my parents' rites of passage at the sink, and mine, and my brothers as well, and now my own kids.
I just love going back to the sink now, and I can go back with my family, with my kids. It's a place that anybody comes in from out of town, we're gonna go to the sink.
I've been in town and I've seen 1,000 restaurants come and go, and yet the sink thrives.
We need to hold on to our casual meeting places with good food and good drinks, and especially one that has as much history as the sink does. Those places everywhere are disappearing, and including in Boulder too.
I hope that everyone still comes here and all the students still call this place a home.
I hope that it continues to grow and have, more history on its walls.
It's obviously special. Noticing how important it is to everybody, knowing that really gives you a drive to really want to take this business for many, many years to come.
The sink's gonna be around another 100 years. It's an amazing place.